Mary, I know what I'm going to do tomorrow and the next day and next year and the year after that. I'm shaking the dust of this crummy little...
Get ready to uncover the scandalous secrets lurking beneath Hollywood's glittering facade. From steamy affairs to shocking revelations, we're counting down the 25 worst sex addicts in Tinseltown history. Buckle up, because this is one ride you won't forget. Number 25, Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway was an American actress who was known for her beauty, talent, and independence. But wait, did you know about Faye's surprising rendezvous with Mick Jagger and Jack Nicholson? Dorothy Faye Dunaway was born in rural Baskin, Florida on January 14, 1941. She studied theater at Boston University, majoring in liberal arts in 1962, joined the training program at New York's Lincoln Center, taught by Ilya Kazan, where she learned method acting. She looked at Eleanor Duse as her role model. She performed in the off-Broadway play Hogan's Goat in 1965 by William Alfred, who became her mentor. She already had acted in 2 films, The Happening with Anthony Quinn and Hurry Sundown with Michael Caine and Jane Fonda, that had not yet been released, when she was cast by director Arthur Penn and producer Warren Beatty in Bonnie and Clyde in 1967, the film that made her a star. That a few of Faye Dunaway's most famous male co-stars were the A-list seducers of their day does not mean that the legendary actress mixed business and pleasure. Dunaway had a number of affairs with famous men, including Warren Beatty, Marcello Mastroianni, and Steve McQueen. She was also rumored to have had affairs with Mick Jagger and Jack Nicholson.
In the midst of all of this, I can't stop thinking of you.
I know.
Number 24, Johnny Weissmuller. Hold on to your vine, because Johnny's escapades with leading ladies and swimming partners are just the tip of the iceberg. Stay tuned for more juicy details. Olympic swimmer and Hollywood actor Johnny Weissmuller's honed physique won him the plum role of Tarzan in a string of movies featuring the jungle hero. But his buff body also attracted numerous women, and Weissmuller took full advantage of the fact, especially with his leading ladies, female swimming partners, and 5 wives. Johnny Weissmuller was actually born in Austria-Hungary, in an area that had been Romania since 1950. But his mother pulled an identity switch to enable him to swim for America in the Olympics. He arrived in the USA at 7 months old, and his brother Pete was born in Pennsylvania 8 months later. Mom switched them around, and Johnny spent the rest of his life in fear of being stripped of his 5 Olympic swimming gold medals. Married 6 times, he was, according to actress Esther Williams, sexually aggressive towards all his leading ladies and female swimming partners. She wrote that he was usually sexually aroused and delighted in exposing himself to her and others. In later years, he was known to stand on the sidewalks outside the hotel rooms of his latest conquests, beating his chest and bellowing his famous Tarzan call.
Here's another face movie audiences will never forget. The screen's most famous Tarzan, Mr. Johnny Weissmuller.
Number 23, Carole Lombard. Carol's comedic genius might have lit up the screen, but her off-screen romances with Clark Gable and Howard Hughes are the stuff of Hollywood legend. Get ready for more scandalous revelations. Carole Lombard was an American actress who was known for her ability to combine elegance and zaniness in some of the most successful and popular film comedies of the 1930s. She left school at the age of 15, and she first appeared under the stage name Carol after 1930 Carole Lombard in a leading role in Marriage in Transit in 1925. She made more than 20 silent films during the 1920s, mostly cast in bit roles or as a supporting player in several Max Sennett-produced comedy shorts. In 1930, she signed a 7-year contract with Paramount and was occasionally afforded the opportunity to display her comedic skills in such films as Fast and Loose in 1930, It Pays to Advertise in 1931, and Man of the World in 1931. It was also during this period that Lombard appeared in No Man of Her Own in 1932, her only film with future husband Clark Gable, married in 1939. She also had a number of affairs with famous men, including William Powell, Howard Hughes, and Otto Preminger. She was also rumored to have had affairs with Clark Gable before they were married.
Corner and a wedding in the West. Clark Gable and Carole Lombard returned from Kingman, Arizona as Mr. and Mrs. Clark Gable. But even a girl like this thinks he's wonderful.
Number 22, Yul Brynner. You won't believe the shocking affair Yul embarked on with Gertrude Lawrence and the countless other lovers he had along the way. Keep watching to uncover the full story. Yul Brynner was born in Vladivostok, Russia in 1920, although he regularly told interviewers to just call me a nice, clean-cut Mongolian boy. According to classmates at the Michael Chekhov Theater Studio in Ridgefield, Connecticut, he and actor Herb Hatfield, 1945's The Picture of Dorian Gray, embarked upon an affair in 1941. In 1951, Yule won the lead in the Broadway production of The King and I opposite Gertrude Lawrence. They were soon lovers despite Gertrude being 17 years his senior. When she died during the running of the show, he burst into tears when told the news. Not because of her death, according to Rodgers and Hammerstein, but because he now had top billing in the show. Yul Brynner was married 4 times and enjoyed a string of affairs and one-night stands along the way. His numerous lovers included Marlene Dietrich, Gina Lollobrigida, and Anne Baxter.
Remember, my sweet, that you must be wife to the next pharaoh. That you are going to be mine.
Number 21, Bette Davis. Bette Davis had a number of affairs with famous men, including George Brent, Howard Hughes, and Errol Flynn. She was also rumored to have had affairs with Humphrey Bogart and John F. Kennedy. Married 4 times, men were a big part of her life, and, says Catherine, she was the happiest when she was in love. When she was in love, look at her films, especially when she was in love with Willy Wyler. Betty had an affair with Wyler when he directed her in Jezebel, for which Betty won 1 of her 2 Oscars. The other was for Dangerous. Of her last husband, Gary Merrill, Betty said, "Gary was macho, but none of my husbands was ever man enough to become Mr. Bette Davis." Davis was also a very independent woman, and she refused to be defined by her relationships with men. She was also a very passionate person, and she was not afraid to pursue what she wanted.
With all my heart, I still love the man I killed.
Number 20, Ronald Reagan. Before he was president, Ronald Reagan was making waves in Hollywood with his steamy affairs and scandalous antics. Stay tuned to find out which leading ladies caught his eye. Long before he harbored any political ambitions, Ronald Reagan was one of Hollywood's most popular actors in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. Before he married Jane Wyman in 1940, Reagan, by all accounts, played the field. But it was after his divorce from Wyman in 1949, and before he met and married second wife Nancy Davis, that Reagan began firing on 4 cylinders, ensconcing himself in the infamous Garden of Allah Hotel, where fellow guests included Errol Flynn, Frank Sinatra, and Tyrone Power, and where he seduced dozens of actresses and starlets. The man from Tampico, Illinois, who would be elected the 40th President of the United States in 1981, was quite a player in Hollywood, especially in his early days in the 30s and 40s. He also resided at the notorious Garden of Allah Hotel and seduced dozens of actresses and others while he was there. These allegedly included Marilyn Monroe, Lana Turner, Ann Sheridan, and Piper Laurie. Miss Laurie openly described him in her memoirs as not a gentleman between the sheets, whatever that implies.
Before the question, you asked me if you could make an announcement first. And I asked you for permission to make an announcement myself.
Would the sound man please turn Mr. Reagan's...
Number 19, Veronica Lake. Veronica's reputation as the bitch and her promiscuous activities with Cary Grant and Howard Hughes are just the beginning. Stick around to uncover more of her Hollywood escapades. During her tenure in Hollywood, Veronica Lake had a reputation for being difficult to work with. Eddie Bracken, one of the many co-stars with Lake in the patriotic musical Star Spangled Rhythm, was quoted as saying she was known as the bitch and she deserved the title. Another question of character were rumors of Lake's promiscuous activities in the industry. Lake herself candidly recounted many of her exploits years later in her autobiography. Veronica Lake had a number of affairs with famous men, including Cary Grant, Howard Hughes, and Errol Flynn. She was also rumored to have had affairs with John Wayne and Alan Ladd. While her book gave truth to the rumors, it also enlightened the fact that she was very picky. Interestingly enough, she often turned down the advances of many leading men. What many suitors interpreted as a hard-to-get attitude in the beginning ended up bitter afterwards, with some of her biggest names in the industry having their egos hurt as a result. Her most famous rejection was Errol Flynn. In her autobiography, she recounts Flynn propositioning her while she was leaving one of his famous parties. "He looked in my eyes and slipped his arm around my waist. His hand slipped down and clamped tightly on my rear end. 'I think we should go and make use of a special bedroom I had, Ronnie,' he said. 'I have a special bedroom I'm going to make use of, Errol,' I replied. 'It's my own and I'm going to sleep in it.'" In retrospect, this was another factor to why many male stars in the industry took such a dislike to her. In the end, there were many actresses in Hollywood referred to as the bitch, but Veronica Lake stood out amongst most who wore the title with pride.
Shall we?
Sorry, but I never dance with the customers.
If you dance with me, I'll put you in the echo.
Number 18, Frederick March. Frederick's charming facade hid a lecherous side that left his co-stars like Claudette Colbert and Irene Dunne reeling. Stay tuned to discover more about his scandalous Hollywood exploits. Frederick March was married to actress Florence Eldridge from 1927 until his death in 1975. A pretty solid and stable kind of guy, right? Not quite. By all accounts, March was a considerable leech who would chase down his female co-stars with alarming tenacity, providing Mrs. March was well out of the picture. Hailing from Racine, Wisconsin, Fred March gained a reputation among his leading ladies as a groping, lecherous womanizer. Married for 47 years to Florence Eldridge, he was always staid and obedient in her presence, but once she was elsewhere, he went after his co-stars with considerable vigor. He had 20 fingers, recalled Claudette Colbert, and they were all over my rear end. Irene Dunne detested him, so did Garbo.
Oh, no, my dear. I'm not going now. I'm going to spend the evening here with you. Just as you want. Say just as I want. Say just as I want.
Just as I want.
That's right, my little bird.
Number 17, Kay Francis. Kay Francis is possibly the biggest of the forgotten stars from Hollywood's golden era. Yet for a while in the 1930s, she ranked as one of America's most popular actresses, tagged the Queen of Warner Brothers. By 1935, she earned a yearly salary of $115,000, compared to Bette Davis with $18,000. The daughter of actress Katherine Clinton and businessman Joseph Gibbs, Kay did not start her working life in show business, but sold real estate and arranged extravagant parties for wealthy socialites. Following her marriage in 1922 to James Dwight Francis, the son of a moneyed family, Kay adopted the surname Francis. Her first acting job was in a modernized 1925 version of Hamlet as the player Queen, performing as Catherine Francis. She then played Marjorie Gray in the melodrama Crime in 1927 and appeared in the Ring Lardner play Elmer the Great in 1928, produced by George M. Cohan and starring Walter Houston as Elmer Kane. On the strength of her stage work, Kay was screen tested by Paramount and subsequently offered a contract. A brief affair with writer-director Edmund Goulding, sometime around April 1928, may have also been a contributing factor. Kay Francis had a number of affairs with famous men, including Kenneth McKenna, Lev Gleason, and Errol Flynn. She was also rumored to have had affairs with Clark Gable, Cary Grant, and Howard Hughes. Francis's promiscuity was often the subject of gossip and speculation. She was sometimes portrayed as a femme fatale, and she was sometimes accused of using her sexuality to get what she wanted. Number 16, Peter Lawford. London-born actor and socialite Peter Lawford was a member of the infamous Rat Pack of entertainers, a group that included Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. Find out more about his colorful social life and scandalous affairs. Married 4 times, Lawford took advantage of his membership and the fact that his brother-in-law was President John F. Kennedy through his marriage to Patricia Helen Kennedy. Lawford's philandering extended to relationships with men, but his colorful social life took a significant hit when Sinatra eventually banished him from his circle. He was bisexual, so his tally of conquests is probably a lot higher than it would have been had he stuck to the ladies. Undoubtedly, his brief popularity was given a lease of life through his association with Sinatra. Not a nice man, actually, and he knew a lot more about Marilyn Monroe's death than he ever divulged.
La porte, the door. Of wood, du bois. Du bois, of wood. To open, ouvrir. Ouvrir, to open.
Number 15, Michael Douglas. Michael's struggles with sex addiction and his candid revelations about his tumultuous love life are just scratching the surface. Don't miss out on more of his Hollywood confessions. The Oscar-winning actor had been married to beauty Catherine Zeta-Jones for years, but he's been candid about his struggles with alcohol and sex addiction. Michael even went so far as to say that his throat cancer was caused by performing oral sex on so many women. Hollywood actor Michael Douglas is perhaps the most high-profile celebrity to confess to being a sex addict and seek treatment for the illness. His repeated public philandering broke up his long marriage to ex-wife Deandra. Douglas, shown above left with his new wife Catherine Zeta-Jones, has refused to appear in a sequel to Basic Instinct, the box office hit in which he starred in X-rated scenes with Sharon Stone.
Why? Because I won't allow you to treat me like some slut you can just bang a couple of times and throw in the garbage?
Number 14, David Janssen. David's reputation as a womanizer rivaled even the most notorious Hollywood playboys. David Janssen made his name as Dr. Richard Kimball in the iconic 60s TV series The Fugitive. The success of that show brought with it fame and plenty of opportunities for dalliance. An inveterate womanizer, David Jansen had sex with more women in Hollywood, said his good friend John Wayne, than Kennedy screwed in Washington, Hollywood, and everywhere else combined. Quite a rap. David, who hailed from Naponee, Nebraska, became universally recognized for his portrayal of Dr. Richard Kimball in the iconic 60s TV series The Fugitive, and with that recognition came a legion of adoring female fans of all ages. Among his many, many relationships were a couple of reasonably lengthy ones with actresses Suzanne Plachette and Angie Dickinson. Unlike many of those on my list, David Jansen appears to have been truly loved by those who knew him, ex-girlfriends and ex-wives included. Number 13, Theda Bara. Theda's seductive allure and rumored affairs with Hollywood's elite made her a true icon of sensuality. Keep watching to uncover more about her scandalous love life. Theda Bara became an icon of sensuality and the exotic for generations. Born Theodosia Goodman, she began working in New York with her own name before she was cast as a vampire seductress in A Fool There Was. Fox film executives changed her name and gave her an exotic origin story. Bara's magnetic performance made her an overnight success. Between 1915 and 1919, she starred in over 40 films. Bara's dark exoticism and the veils and bangles she wore helped create the archetype of the seductive vamp. But her career was short-lived. As American tastes changed, Bara was passed over in favor of more wholesome starlets. A 1937 fire at the Fox film vaults destroyed most of her movies, yet she endures as a cinematic icon. Theda Bara had a number of affairs with famous men, including Charlie Chaplin, William Randolph Hearst, and Rudolph Valentino. She was also rumored to have had affairs with many other men, including John Barrymore, Douglas Fairbanks, and William G. Harding.
Original It Girl, Theda Bara, and the grandma of all the Baras, appearing in such delightful little tidbits as Love Is Not All, where she plays the bird in the Gilded Cage, or the Platinum Bat.
Number 12, Leslie Howard. Leslie's roving eye and tragic end make for a compelling tale of Hollywood scandal. Not the most obvious of Hollywood heartthrobs, English actor and movie idol Leslie Howard nonetheless had a roving eye and was known as a ladies' man. Tallulah Bankhead and Merle Oberon numbered among his conquests, and it was his apparent desire to see another girlfriend in London that made him switch planes in Lisbon, Portugal on June 1, 1943, a flight that would end in tragedy. The aircraft he was traveling in was shot down over the Atlantic by a German Luftwaffe fighter, killing all on board. Number 11, Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer was an American actress who was known for her rebellious spirit and her tragic life story. She was also known for her promiscuity, which was unusual for a Hollywood actress at the time. Farmer had a number of affairs with famous men, including William Wyler, Clifford Odets, and Howard Hughes. She was also rumored to have had affairs with John Wayne and Clark Gable. However, it is important to note that Farmer's life was also marked by tragedy. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia and was institutionalized for several years. She was also subjected to electroshock therapy and other barbaric treatments.
Would you like to know a secret? He's asked for my hand.
Well, it's only to be expected. I've noticed him handling it at every opportunity. It should make your father very pleased.
Well, then put that in your head.
That which puts things in most people.
Number 10, Victor Mature. One of Hollywood's great sword and scandal actors of the 1950s, appearing in Samson and Delilah in 1949, The Robe in 1953, and Demetrius and the Gladiators in 1954. Victor Mature's conquests over and above his 5 wives included Esther Williams, Elizabeth Taylor, and Veronica Lake. When I was a kid, my mates and I used to laugh at Victor Mature. We could not believe he could be a movie star and highly desirable to the opposite sex. He was not your average male movie heartthrob. No, not by a long shot. Boy, were we wrong. He had lovers coming out of his ears. In his early days in Hollywood, he dated Carol Landis, Betty Grable, and Rita Hayworth. One-night stands with Lana Turner, Alice Faye, and newcomer Belva Darby followed.
Go, Delilah. Run. Into the courtyard.
No.
Death will come into this temple.
Number 9, Ginger Rogers. Ginger Rogers was known for her promiscuity, but it was more discreet than some of her contemporaries. She had a number of affairs with famous men, including Fred Astaire, Clark Gable, and Cary Grant. She was also rumored to have had affairs with Howard Hughes and John F. Kennedy. Ginger Rogers was previously married to William Marshall from 61 to 69, Jacques Bergerac from 53 to 57, Jack Briggs from 43 to 49, Lou Ayres from 34 to 41, and Jack Pepper from 1929 to 1931. Ginger Rogers was engaged to Howard Hughes in 1940. Ginger Rogers was in relationships with Greg Bautzer, 1948 to 50, James Stewart, 1941, Gene Gabin, 1939, Alfred G. Vanderbilt, 1937, Cesar Romero, 1932, Mervyn LeRoy, 1930 to 33, Rudy Valley, 1929, Robert Eaton, and A.C. Lyles. Number 8. Rory Calhoun. Rory's troubled past and scandalous affairs with Hollywood's elite reveal a darker side to his charming persona. Stay tuned to learn more about his tumultuous love life and shocking revelations. Rory Calhoun was signed by 20th Century Fox after Alan Ladd's wife and Hollywood agent Sue Carroll saw him horse riding in a Los Angeles park and arranged a screen test for him. Before that, he had been in considerable trouble, having dropped out of school, drifted into petty theft, and then started boosting cars, for which he served 3 years in a federal reformatory. When his screen career began to take off, his agent, Henry Wilson, released details of Rory's criminal past to Confidential magazine in exchange for the publication holding off on a story about another of Henry's clients, Rock Hudson. Confidential reluctantly agreed to not out Hudson as a homosexual and ran with the Calhoun story instead. Rory's career was considered expendable at the time. Oddly enough, the story did little to impede it. In 1949, Rory married singer-actress Lita Barron, a fiery Spaniard who sang with the Xavier Cugat Orchestra. The union lasted 22 years until they arrived at the divorce court, and Lita named 79 women her husband had committed adultery with throughout their marriage. Heck, she didn't even include half of them. He bragged outside the courtroom, and it was true. Betty Grable, Lana Turner, Beverly Tyler, Yvette Vickers, Barbara Stanwyck, Vera Ellen, and Corian Calvert were just a few of his myriad conquests. Interestingly, several reliable sources reported that he and fellow actor Guy Madison were found in an intimate embrace in Rory's car. The studio heads were advised and the story was buried. Both men were making good money for the studio at that time. For a long time, their relationship remained one of Hollywood's best-kept secrets.
Starring Rory Calhoun, who shot straight, fought hard, and made love the same way.
Number 7. James Stewart. Born in Indiana, Pennsylvania, Jimmy Stewart became one of the biggest stars in movie history, probably because he appealed to so many different types of people. Men liked him, children liked him, and women absolutely adored the guy. He has always enjoyed a reputation as a prolific ladies' man, but I am still uncertain just how prolific that really was. It is common knowledge that he was sent out on scores of publicity dates, possibly hundreds, and the tabloids just assumed he slept with them all. He definitely landed his share, but just how many is still open to conjecture because Jimmy was not the kiss-and-tell type. There were well-publicized romances with Loretta Young and Marlene Dietrich, but Louis B. Mayer at MGM became seriously worried that the public thought Jimmy might be gay, so he ordered him off to the studio-owned brothel to make a man of him. Of course, Stewart was neither gay nor bisexual, but the studio owned him, so he reluctantly did as he was told.
Mary, I know what I'm going to do tomorrow and the next day and next year and a year after that. I'm shaking the dust of this crummy little town off my feet and I'm going to see the world.
Number 6. Robert Mitchum. Before he came to Hollywood, Mitchum had a rough and tumble life that really didn't change when he became a star. In fact, when he was arrested on a marijuana charge in 1948 and sent to a short prison sentence, the incident didn't hurt his career. In fact, it solidified his cool image. He was married for 57 years to his wife Dorothy and had 3 children, but was a notorious womanizer on the sets. In fact, a filmmaker who worked with Mitchum during the 1970s told McBride that the actor would make 1 movie a year and would drink a lot and end up having an affair with someone while on location. Number 5. Brigitte Bardot. 60s sex bomb Brigitte Bardot has a life as epic as her fame and with the drama of her films. She had more than 100 lovers, including women. She also tried to kill herself at least 4 times, the same number of husbands she has had, according to a new book on the French actress, model, and chanteuse. She had just fallen in love with Roger Vadim, then a director's assistant 6 years her senior, after meeting him at a movie casting. They began an intense affair, but when Bardot's wealthy Parisian parents found out, they threatened to send her away to England. In retaliation, Bardot, whose first magazine cover was on Elle at the age of 15, tried to kill herself. They relented, permitting the relationship but forbade the couple from marrying until Bardot was 18. Sure enough, in 1950, when Bardot was 18 years old, she married for the first time. On set, however, Bardot fell in love with her co-star, Jean-Louis Trintignant, and after 4 short years of marriage, she and Vadim divorced. After her affair with Trintignant, she went on to bed as many as 100 men and women. Bardot married her 4th and last husband, politician Bernard Dormale, in 1992.
Alors? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a de cassé?
Je t'ai déjà dit. Rien. Je voulais seulement te voir.
Number 4, Wally Cox. Most historians have always conceded that he took male lovers on occasion, but the numbers now come as a surprise to many, including me. By his own admittance, he acknowledged Montgomery Clift, James Dean, Tyrone Power, Laurence Olivier, John Gielgud, Cary Grant, Noel Coward, Leonard Bernstein, and the last love of his life, director Christian Marquand. Others listed by several historians include Rock Hudson, Tab Hunter, Burt Lancaster, and, I personally find difficult to believe, Paul Newman and Gregory Peck. Brando's deep relationship with Wally Cox may or may not have been consummated, but the mumbling one openly admitted that he kept the pajamas that Wally died in. He also secretly kept his friend's ashes hidden in a closet and would often speak to them. If Wally had been a woman, Brando confided later, I would have married him and we would have lived happily ever after.
Where I can lose these basins to reap
Number 3, Kirk Douglas. It would be reasonably safe to say that Kirk Douglas has never been known to the majority of his associates and colleagues as a nice guy. There has never been a shortage of massive egos in Tinseltown, and Kirk was one of those big stars possessed of an even bigger ego than most. The likes of Douglas, Burt Lancaster, and Yul Brynner, to name just 3, had little time for anyone or anything but their careers. And oh, women, they all liked women. Douglas kicked off his screen career with the strange love of Martha Ivers in 1946, and by the early 50s he was a very hot property. His marriage to Diana Dill ended in 1951. She was the mother of Michael, and with its end, Kirk's skirt chasing entered a whole new phase. Not that he had been faithful to Diana anyway. Affairs with Marilyn Maxwell on the set of Champion in 1948, Linda Darnell that same year, and Patricia Neal in 49 probably contributed to the breakdown of the marriage. According to his memoirs, he managed to squeeze in a rather clinical one-night stand with Joan Crawford as well. In 1952, Kirk and Pierre Angeli fell in love and were briefly engaged to be married. At the same time, he was involved for 2 years with Lana Turner. Incredibly, he was sleeping with Rita Hayworth, Terry Moore, Patricia Knight, and Monica Knox whenever the opportunity arose. He married German-American producer Ann Bidens in 1954, and they were still together 62 years later.
Why don't you call up Johnny Dunn?
All right, big shot, try it. I'll make the biggest stink that's ever smelled in this town. I will...
Number 2, Paulette Goddard. Paulette Goddard was an American actress and socialite. Her career spanned 6 decades, from the 1920s to the early 1970s. She was a prominent leading actress during the golden age of Hollywood. Goddard initially began her career as a child fashion model and performer in several Broadway productions as a Ziegfeld girl. In the early 1930s, she moved to Hollywood and gained notice as the romantic partner of actor and comedian Charlie Chaplin, appearing as his leading lady in Modern Times in 1936 and The Great Director in 1940. After signing with Paramount Pictures, Goddard became one of the studio's biggest stars. Paulette Goddard had a number of affairs with famous men, including Charlie Chaplin, John F. Kennedy, and Burgess Meredith. She was also rumored to have had affairs with Errol Flynn, David Niven, and Howard Hughes.
I had a swell time, Eve.
I'm glad you did. What was your last name again?
Rogers.
Rogers.
I feel swell. I don't even feel lonesome anymore.
That was the idea.
Number 1, Gene Tierney. Jean's A-list status and her series of scandalous affairs paint a picture of Hollywood's golden age. 1940s A-lister Gene Tierney had a series of affairs during her life that made her look like a sexual Forrest Gump. She is purported to have gone to bed with John F. Kennedy, Howard Hughes, and actor Tyrone Power. She was first married to fashion designer Ole Cassini and then married oilman W. Howard Lee shortly after he divorced actress Hedy Lamarr.
Perhaps you don't think I'm good enough for you, or romantic enough. I know people thought I was marrying into the Berendt family for reasons, but that's not true. I want you to know that I had only one reason. I want you to know that I was in love with you.
Thank you for joining on this wild journey through Hollywood's scandalous past. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out our other juicy gossip and entertainment content. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more tantalizing tales.